Say, Fred, what do those Denny's red, white, and blue pancakes taste like? Steve Rogers. Spoilers! Hi everyone, welcome back to Comic Book Issues. It's another one of our famous vlogs. I just saw Captain America 2. I liked it. I liked it a lot better than I liked the first one. If you saw my vlog for the first Captain America movie, you know I have some problems with it, especially the second half of the film. But this film works much better. It feels like a true sequel to the Avengers. Iron Man 3 and Thor 2, those felt like sequels to their own movies. This one feels like a sequel to the Avengers. I thought Chris Evans did a fine job as Captain America. He's okay in that role. I've never been a huge Captain America fan. I've never been terribly enthusiastic about the character, but Chris Evans looks the part. He's got a humility that he brings to the role that I think is important for Steve Rogers. He's still playing the man out of time aspect, and that works fairly well in this film. There's several moments, like he has a list of things he has to get caught up on, and like one of the things is Nirvana, another is Marvin Gaye, you know, so that's kind of funny. This is almost more S.H.I.E.L.'s story than Captain America's. One of the points I made about the last couple of films, Iron Man 3 and Thor 2, there was no S.H.I.E.L.D. presence. Here, S.H.I.E.L.D. is all over this movie, and this story has a huge impact on S.H.I.E.L.D., so much so that I'm wondering where they're going to go with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. if it does get a second season. Maybe they just planned on 1 year, who knows. This is a huge S.H.I.E.L.D. story that stars Captain America, let's put it that way. This is an action movie. One thing that annoyed me was the editing was a little too quick in the action scenes. The fights jump back and forth in their cuts so quickly you can't really tell what's happening at times. And I know action scenes generally have fast cuts, but this seemed a little too fast for my taste. But otherwise, on the whole, I liked this film. Starting with the cast, I'm glad they brought back Haley Atwell as Peggy Carter to wrap up that kind of loose end from the last film. In Avengers, there was a deleted scene, I think, that we found out she was still alive. It was kind of hanging over this one, whatever happened to Peggy. They show that, we visit with her, she's still alive. One of the big problems I have is, of course she's now has Alzheimer's, she's senile. She doesn't remember that Steve went missing. She's talking to him normally, then she has the flash, and all of a sudden she's lost in her own mind. Did we need that? Does every old person in a dramatic movie have to have Alzheimer's? It almost seems like a cliche at this point. It was just a brief scene, too. You didn't really need to give her Alzheimer's. You could have just had her lucid. It wouldn't have hurt anything. And it didn't add anything to make her senile. Who else was in this movie that I liked? Scarlett Johansson. I kind of felt that her Black Widow was a mixed blessing. She kind of plays Captain America's sidekick throughout this film. And there's a point in the first part of the movie where you think she might be a traitor. That's something they did in the Ultimate, so actually I could see it happening. But it didn't actually happen. She's still a good guy. She's still a superhero. But it felt like they were hinting at her past, but they never explored it. There was like all this promise, and there's been all this setup for the Black Widow in Iron Man 2, in Avengers, in Captain America 2, but there's no follow-through. I hope Scarlett gets the Black Widow movie, because it feels like they've been setting up a lot with this character, but there's been no payoff. You at one point think she could be a traitor. She isn't. You at one point think she's in this for redemption, but, you know, what did she do? They say that her secrets are going to get out there. Even at the end of the movie, we still don't know what her secrets are. They're just hinted that she's done terrible things. I'd like to explore her character more. She does a fine job acting in the film. She's good. She has some funny moments, but I kind of feel we've had 3 movies with her now. Let's get some payoff for this character. The other 2 females in this film were Kobe Smulders, as Maria Hill back from Avengers, and I can't remember the actress's name who played her, but the Sharon Carter character, Agent 13, although they never call her Sharon Carter. They don't establish her as Peggy's niece or anything. She's just Sharon, Agent 13. Both those parts could have been combined into one. We didn't really need Maria Hill in this film. The Agent 13 part, she could have played those roles. She could have been Nick Fury's backup and the woman watching Captain America. It really felt like there wasn't enough for either part to be very interesting or very crucial to the movie. So if they combine them into one role, and I don't really feel like we needed Maria Hill in this film. I don't feel like she added much. It was more like, well, we're doing the destruction of S.H.I.E.L.D., so we have to show what happens to like the second in command, which I'm not sure she ever officially was, but that's what it felt like. I've been mentioning Iron Man 2. There was another character back from Iron Man 2, and in a fun way, because when we learned something about him, this I won't spoil, we learned something about him, but then it retroactively retells Iron Man 2 in a different way now. Now we understand maybe why that character was such a terrible person, why he was kind of a jerk. Okay, it's Gary Shandling. He's back as the Senator from Iron Man 2, and we learn that he's a Hydra agent. So, hey, That's why he was after Iron Man's armor. Maybe. He was just a jerk in that film, but now we learn he's an enemy agent. Nick Fury, Samuel L. Jackson did a good job with the role. I knew Nick Fury wasn't dead. It looks like he's dead early on, but come on, I knew. The man has like an 18-film contract. I mean, I don't know exactly how many, but he's signed up for a lot of movies, and I think he's only halfway through. So, I mean, there was no way they were killing that character off. So I kind of knew he was going to come back. I wasn't surprised by that. But he did a good job with the action scenes. He did a good job with, the cautious commander. He's like, I'm ready to move forward this plan, but something in the back of my head is bothering me. Something isn't right. And as we kind of learn that he and the Black Widow were working behind Captain America's back, and there's this conflict between Steve and Nick that works for the film, where Captain America still wants kind of a simpler time, but Nick Fury knows that espionage isn't that way anymore, that you have to be proactive with protecting your country, and that just doesn't feel right to Steve. And there's this dynamic conflict that these two are butting heads about that works for the first half of the film, and then they kind of come together to save the day at the end, and that works for an action film. Robert Redford was very good. I appreciate that they didn't make him the type fillet. I will say with Robert Redford, they did tip their hats a little too early, where he gives a speech, if I have to tear down this world to build up a better one, I'll do it. As soon as he said that, you knew the guy was evil. He was charming and sophisticated to begin with, and he was charming and sophisticated at the end. Yes, he was the bad guy, but it wasn't one of these power-craving megalomaniacs, And that's a nice change of pace in a superhero movie, where the villain isn't just this guy saying, I will rule the world! He's like, it's the misguided intentions. Yes, we're doing terrible things, but we're doing it for the right reasons. Terrence Mackie. Terrence Mackie was the bomb in this movie. Terrence Mackie was playing Sam Wilson, the Falcon. I like how he and Steve Rogers strike up their friendship. I like, there's no Falcon on his arm. There's no funny suit for him to wear, really. He looks more like, once again, the Ultimates version of the Falcon. But he felt very real. They did a good job writing this character, making him the veteran, working with coming home, working with getting through PTSD, helping others get through PTSD. No regrets about serving his country, but sorrow over serving it. It left its scars, I kept wondering how they were going to make Sam the Falcon, and then it turns out he was always the Falcon. Okay, where did that suit of armor come from? Did Iron Man design that? It feels like there should be a little more backstory to where they came up with the flying suits of armor, but he did a good job. Really great sidekick dynamic there as well. ScarJo was the sidekick of record for this movie, but he played a nice third wheel to their duo. And it sets up them as a team at the end, and I would like to see more Captain America Falcon stuff. Honestly, that was really cool. That Agent Rumlow character, he was good. He made a nice foil for Steve. As soon as I heard that name, I recognized it, so he was kind of a burnt mess in the last one, so we could see him come back as Crossbones, but, as soon as I heard the name Rumlow, I knew he's a bad guy. But that was insider comic book knowledge, so I think they played him fairly well as the agent who was in charge of the team, who then is working with the bad guys. He was the dragon character, if we're going by TV tropes terminology. I really liked how they brought Toby Jones back as Zola. If you saw the first movie, you saw him speaking into the video, and we saw his picture on the television. It goes even more towards the Zola we know from the comic books in this one, but as far as you can go without making it kind of ridiculous. So I'm glad they brought Zola back. I'm glad they brought him back the way they did. Toby Jones I won't even say it was a cameo, but his small part of this film was appreciated, and I liked the call out, the nods to the comic book character, as it were. Finally, the Winter Soldier himself, Sebastian Stan, back as Bucky. Okay, so they aged Bucky up in the last film, so he and Steve were contemporaries rather than his little young sidekick. It didn't really feel like they did enough with the Winter Soldier. This is my biggest complaint. He's just the kind of the elephant in the room, the MacGuffin they're chasing after, then trying to stop and save at the same time. And they didn't really give you that great redemption moment, so I was left kind of wondering why he saved Steve at the end. Did he get his memories back? They never really explained that. There's a little thing at the end where he's kind of looking back into his life and discovering who he is. But it was just kind of a little too open-ended. For a film called The Winter Soldier wasn't that big of a character. It felt like the first half of the Winter Soldier's story. It was left very open-ended. There was still a lot to be done with that character. You didn't feel like he'd been redeemed. You didn't even know if he'd understood what was happening. He's pretty much just the gun the bad guys point and fire. There's a lot left to be done with that character, and hopefully that'll happen in Cap 3. But yeah, the Winter Soldier himself was a bit of a disappointment. And when you're calling your movie The Winter Soldier, that's a problem. Finally, the end credit little thing, setting up Avengers 2. I really liked that. The introduction of Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. And the fact that it was Baron von Strucker who calls them the twins. I'm wondering, since they can't touch Magneto because he's over at Fox, are they going to switch it and make Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch his children? Because he does have mutant twins of his own. He called them the twins. They weren't necessarily his. There's a lot left to be found out about these characters. Obviously, it was just a quick cameo, but it was a cool cameo. We got to see what happened to Loki's magic wand sword thing at the end of Avengers, and we got to meet the next two Avengers. So that was a really cool setup. That makes me look a little bit more forward to Age of Ultron. The Age of Ultron comics sucked. But hopefully the movie will be good. Once again, I like the movie. I think it works best if you view it as a sequel to Avengers, or even as a prequel to Avengers 2, to a point. But I did like it. It's a fun action film. I liked it better than Iron Man 3, and I liked it better than Thor 2, which is odd, because once again, I didn't like the first Captain America. But I did like this sequel. It wasn't great, but it's probably the best of the post-Avengers sequels that I've seen. Well, that's it for now. The next vlog is going to be Amazing Spider-Man 2 at the end of the month. Beginning of next, probably. And I'll see you then. I'm the Last Angry Geek, and this is Comic Book Issues.